Good morning, members. We have already formed a quorum. It is also time to start. I would like to welcome everybody to the Public Works Subcommittee meeting by video conferencing. For today's meeting, it is also the first meeting in the Year of the Tiger. I just wish you good health and wish you the best in life and at work. And I also wish that with the full support of the Central People's Government, Hong Kong can stand united so that we can overcome the pandemic as early as possible, so that we can return to normality, we can resume travel without quarantine arrangements, and the economy will recover. Please note that throughout the meeting, you need to show your face when we have the Zoom meeting. Your mic will only be switched on with my permission. Please use the virtual color background. For election committee, orange, functional constituencies, green, and then GCs, purple. We have simultaneous interpretation today. For participants who may choose the language channel of your choice, and our meeting will be broadcast live online. For the first item on the agenda, this is about application for late membership. Professor Honorable Nelson Lam would like to join the subcommittee. The ground has been set out in his letter on the 15th of January. He submitted a letter to us and has been emailed to you. According to 4A of our rules of procedures, for late membership application, it is up to subcommittee members to decide whether it is to be accepted or not. In relation to Professor Lam's application, do you have any comments? If so, please press the button to speak. I don't see anybody raising his hands. Well, in this case, I would like to ask our members to indicate whether they support his application, whether you accept his application. Please raise your hands if you are in agreement. That is, if you agree to his application for late membership, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. Any objection? Any objection? I don't see anybody raising his hand to object. Any abstention? Abstentions? No. Again, no hands have been raised. So in this case, we say that we agree to Professor Honorable Nelson Lam's application for late membership of the PWSCI. Next, we have a discussion paper for our processing. Please take a look at the paper entitled Forecast of Submissions for the 2022 Legislative Council Session. In order to be orderly and to be fair when you speak, I will ask our staff to clear all the icons of raised hands that have been pressed. All right, all cleared. So for those who would like to speak, please press the raise hand button. Show of hands, please. For those who would like to speak, show of hands, please. As I need to have an idea about the time management to see how much time I can give each of you. All right. In a moment, I'm going to let you know the order of speakers. So this is about the forecast of submissions for the 2022 Legislative Council Session. So please take a look at paper PWSCI 2021 to 2210. And this sets out the potential capital works items to be submitted to us in 2022 session. So there are altogether 71 projects. The relevant government officials are in attendance. by way of Zoom meeting to answer your questions. For this information paper, it doesn't involve any funding requests. The individual projects will be presented to respective panels and then to be vetted by the PWSCI. But at today's meeting, there's no need for us to vet any funding applications, and therefore we are not going to vote on any items. Other than speaking at today's meeting, after the meeting, you may also write directly to the relevant bureau or department, or you may raise questions at the relevant panel. In attendance, we have the controlling officers of the relevant projects. The attendance list has already been emailed to members. Well, there are quite a large number of them, so I'm not going to introduce individual public officers who are in attendance. First of all, I would like to invite Mr. Howard Lee, Deputy Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury, to walk us through the paper briefly, and then I will read out the order of speakers who will be given the floor to ask questions. First of all, Mr. Howard Lee. Sorry, speaker is off mic. Mr. Lee, please. Mr. Lee may start. Please switch on his microphone. Yes. Can you switch on your own microphone? We can't hear you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Interpreters cannot hear the speaker. The chairman says there's no input. It's fine. Our technicians will try to switch on the mic as soon as possible. But other members told us that they were able to hear him. But on the contrary, we in the conference room cannot hear him. I'm sorry, but please bear with us. We have to find out why we in the conference room cannot hear him.
好啦，咁啊冇辦法啦，只好。
Well, we can't help but wait for a few minutes. Chair, can you hear me? Yes, it's fine. Mr. Lee, please start. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members and Chairman. Today, the administration has submitted an information paper to you, and that's about the potential capital works items to be submitted to the Public Works Subcommittee in the 2022 electrical session. We'd like to give you an overview. We'd like to let you know as early as possible so that members can have an initial understanding of the projects. The list has been compiled on the basis of the progress assessed by various bureaus and departments. So it is a list of items for your reference. Generally speaking, bureaus and departments will consult the relevant panels in relation to works projects. With the support of the relevant panel, we will then go to the PWSCI. With the support of the PWSCI, bureaus and departments will then refer the item to the Finance Committee to seek funding approval. As set out in the paper, in the year 2022, in the 2022 Legislative Council session, we plan to submit 71 projects, including 70 items as well as one block vote. We believe that for the items to be submitted, we are going to ask for $130 billion in total. I just want to say that this is the best estimate that we have in relation to different projects. As to the specific timing of the submission of the relevant papers, it depends on the progress, and including consultation with the relevant panel. Today, we have Bureau representatives as well as Works Department's representatives in attendance. We're happy to take questions from you. If members would like to have further information after the meeting, you are most welcome to do so. That is, you can liaise with the relevant bureaus or departments, hoping that we can facilitate your consideration of the works items later on. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Lee. All right, it is now time for members to ask questions. Let me read out the list of speakers. That is those who have already indicated they wish to speak. First of all, Dr. Chi-yuen, Deng Gaobiu, Jovi Chen, Vincent Zhang, Chen Hockfeng, Frankie Yik, Henry Fogg, Dr. Priscilla Leung, and Yang Wing Kit. Anybody else who would like to speak? If you want to speak, please indicate your wish as early as possible. Now, you have a time slot for both your question and answer. So make sure that you are concise so that there will be enough time for the public officers to answer your questions. 4 minutes each. First of all, Dr. Tick. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members, Chairman. A few questions. Now, for the EDB, the Education Bureau, we understand that a few schools will be built. For the primary schools, many of them are in relation to the re-provisioning of schools. So I just want to know about the demand and supply, whether there is a balance, because you are re-provisioning a school from an older area to a new area. And then for item 12, and that's in relation to the Sunny Bay reclamation. That's about the planning and engineering study. It's fine if you proceed to a study. For reclamation, it is still very controversial, especially among the green groups. So I want to know about your public consultation exercise. Have you already started it, or whether you have got other arrangements? And then I have read all the information in your paper. I don't see any welfare projects like residential and care homes for the elderly, as well as RCH for the disabled. Why is it so?
May we invite the Director of Architectural Services to answer the questions first? Can you hear me? Yes, for schools, for the balance between supply and demand, it is actually in line with the policy of the Education Bureau. When there is a need for schools, and they would indicate to us the need, and they would conduct a comprehensive research looking into the supply and demand. I think the figures can only be provided by the Education Bureau. As for social welfare facilities, many would use the lottery fund as funding allocation, and at this moment we do not see any projects lined up. How about for the research on reclamation? Director of CEDD? Because there has been consultation on reclamation for many years. Please speak. Chairman, can you hear me? Thank you for your question. We take into consideration conservation when we look at reclamation. We would look in detail the impact it has on the ecology and would conduct a comprehensive assessment. Dr. Chick asked us whether we would conduct any consultation. Within our planning and engineering study, we do have a requirement to conduct a public engagement exercise. And we must look into the technical feasibility of the reclamation site and the ecological impact it has on the environment. Thank you. Well, I just want to confirm that there would be such procedures. Well, but then for the lottery fund, providing for social welfare facilities, I just want to show my disappointment that there are no projects lined up for that this year. Director of Architectural Services, can you supplement? Thank you, Chairman. This is up to how the SWD looks at these facilities, and I'm sure that they're willing to work with us on providing facilities when needed. Mr. Tankapu, 4 minutes, please. Thank you, Chairman. Infrastructure projects can provide job opportunities. Therefore, all along, the FTU has been in support of the government in engaging in more works project. And this is exactly where my question is coming from. We are looking at a total of 71 projects on the submissions. Have you conducted a comprehensive assessment on the job opportunities? Many people are worried about their jobs at this current moment, and therefore we attach huge importance to job openings. However, have you done enough preparation? Let me give you an example. The Kai Tak sports ground, we see suddenly a lack of construction workers in pipes, but we have asked the construction council about it, and it seems that there has not been any discussion with the construction council on how many workers would be needed in certain technical aspects, and there has not been any training done. I'm worried now. We have spent the money, we've created the jobs, yet there has not been any consultation with the industry on the needed labor, and therefore we have to import labor to engage in these jobs. For example, we need to look into the development of Kai-tak because it will be in line with the holding of the National Games in 2025. We must ensure that we liaise with the industry before we create any jobs, and I hope that you were able to respond to my question. This is actually a general question. Can I defer to the Development Bureau to answer this question? Mr. Tang has asked 2 questions. Let me try to address the questions. Out of the 71 projects submitted, we considered the number of jobs created. We believe that we'll be able to open up 31,000 jobs, out of which 20,000 would be jobs for workers, and then about 5,000 for infrastructure workers. And we do hope that we'll be able to push forward these projects as soon as possible. As to the second question, we are also very concerned with the labor needed. All along, we have been working with the industry to provide adequate manpower. The Construction Council and the industry have been also providing training for workers and to work together to provide on-site training and joint training courses. The government has also earmarked funding in training. We have always been working on the estimate of manpower needed for the industry, especially on the supply and demand of certain expertise. I believe that we'll be able to come up with a result on that by the 3rd quarter, and that can enhance our training work, and we'll be able to target more on what manpower is needed. Well, I think that there has not been any clear consultation with the industry. Your time has run out. I hope you'll be able to follow up on another panel, because this is something we are all concerned with, which is manpower. Ms. Jovi Chen. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to talk about number 38 of the project. Well, the Tuen Mun Long Gu Tan villagers are actually objecting to the widening of the road in Tuen Mun, and that would actually be adding pressure to the roads. The Long Gu Tan villagers have suggested opening up Bo-on Road tunnel. At that time, the government suggested that the government should do that, but then by March of 2021, and the government shelved the project. Chairman, well, last year, Long Gu Tan wanted to provide a look into judicial review. I would like to ask the government that when you're looking into the widening of the reclamation site, would you actually be adding pressure to the roads? This time on the Samran Road widening, have you discussed with the villagers, and what were the results of the discussion? Do villagers believe that it can actually take the place of opening up the tunnel? I see on paper, Chairman, that there's actually a date for consultation. I suggest that you should also add in a estimate construction commencement date so that we'll be able to have more materials and information on the projects. Highways Department, can you address this question? Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ovi Chan, for your question. Let me give you an update. Actually, we're talking about two parts on the upgrading of Nim 1 Road North. Well, actually, these roads are connecting. And at Nim 1 Road North, our plan is that after our initial feasibility study, we're going to continue with our initial design. We hope to widen Nim 1 Road North to become a two-lane carriageway. Deep Bay Road has already had its technical study completed. And so we are looking into the detailed design at this moment. We hope after completion of the detailed design for Deep Bay Road, we'll be able to commence works as soon as possible. As for the timetable, Nim 1 Road North, I just want to ask about the timetable. And have you consulted the villagers? Our director is trying to address your question. Nim 1 Road North needs to see the completion of its environmental impact assessment before we can continue the works. We are more advanced in the works of Deep Bay Road because after 33 months of design, we'll be able to commence our works. We have consulted the villagers for both roads. We've already completed consulting the villagers on Deep Bay Road, and in terms of design, we would consider the villagers' responses as well. Well, as to the timeline and the estimated cost, it is included in the enclosure. But then it's a very rough estimate because we only see the projects being listed as either below 200 million to 500 million, or above 500 million. But this is our usual practice. This is only a rough estimate on the indicative cost of proposed projects. And when the details come out, of course, there would be more detailed information on the indicative cost. Next, Mr. Vincent Chang, 4 minutes, please. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members. I have two questions. One is actually on page 70 on the Yancho Street public vehicle park. I remember 3 years ago, we worked on this to have this public vehicle park. But then this would only be brought up for discussion at the end of the year. I think that it is too late. I have a few questions on the public vehicle park. This time, there is a special mention on providing open space above the public vehicle park. But then in a previous paper, we said it would also be for parking. Well, we're looking at a smart car park, but it shouldn't be so expensive to be above 500 million. Pwsc, Simei Street, we are also proposing such car parks. We want to know about the updates of the works. There is also transitional housing nearby, so I hope that you'll be able to private this as soon as possible. The second question is on the Environmental Bureau on actually the open space in Tsim Sha Tsui East on sewage in Kowloon West and in we also carried out a discussion on the odor around the area. I want to know more about these updates.
地同埋
First of all, let's take a look of the open space and public vehicle park in Yanchao Street. Who will take the question? Yes, Director of Architectural Services. Yes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Zhang, for his questions. For Yanchao Street, it is a multi-purpose single site or multi-uses single site project. Indeed, there's an open space at grade, and then the car park will be underground. It will be in the form of a smart car park with about 200 parking spaces. For the Simei Street project, it is by way of inviting tenders in parallel. So soon you're able to know that we are going to present the paper at a PWSCI meeting in relation to Simei Street. Chair, if I may spend a little bit of time on Dr. Tick's question about welfare projects. Well, in fact, I'm sorry, I missed one of the projects. There is a 6-story tall building at Anderson Road with residential places for the elderly. We are going to the FC soon. Other than the facility for the elderly, there will also be recreation and leisure facilities as well. What about the cost? And does it mean that you're going to have an open space on top, a park or a garden on top? Yes, for the Central Pool project, yes, indeed. Above the car park, we are going to have a garden. Underground, we have the smart car park. We are going to optimize the site. As for the cost, as the chair has indicated, we are going to give you details concerning the cost when we go to the panel. So today, we just want to give you a preliminary idea. All right, thank you. Mr. Zhang, what about the Environment Bureau? What about the dry weather interception? Dry weather flow interceptor, DWFI. Yes, Environment Bureau. Yes, if I may be brief. Well, in fact, on either side of the Victoria Harbour, along the coast, we do have a number of such dry weather flow interceptors. A few months ago, we went to the Environment Bureau as well as other panels of the Legislative Council to inform members that we are going to proceed with it ASAP. Well, we are still at the stage of initial studies. There are about 4 or 5 projects around the Victoria Harbour, hoping that between 2026 and 28 they will be completed. For the details, I'm afraid I don't have them to share with members. Thank you, Chair. Just a brief one. Regarding the dry weather flow interceptor, I hope the study will be completed soon because there is a very keen demand for such facilities. I think your concern is noted. Next, Mr. Chen Haofeng, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Well, for those related to Island West, I think we have got a number of public pier projects. I hope they can be completed soon. Now, for the islands, outlying islands, we have got many elderly citizens. For the improvements to the public piers, have you considered accessibility to make sure that it is universally accessible? And then what about parking of bicycles? I'm sure you know that at public piers, we have problems with cycle parking. Are you going to take this opportunity to resolve the problem? And then for Sai Ying Pun, Eastern Street, there's an open space to be planned. Of course, I'm aware of it, but then currently it is still being used for the parking of dangerous goods vehicles. We don't have space for goods vehicles. So what is the outcome of your consultation with the public? I have received complaints from them because they are worried that by cancelling the parking spaces, they have nowhere to go. So please share with us the outcome of the public consultation. And the public mortuary, you do have my support about your plan. But then, of course, I know that there is a project concerning Mount Davis cottage area. Both projects will be carried out along Victoria Road. Currently, there is only one lane up and one lane down. The road is full of bends and narrow. So do take this opportunity to widen Victoria Road and Mount Davis Road. I think the speed of the flow is high, and then the road is full of bends. So universal accessibility, parking of bicycles, etc. Which department or departments will give an answer? Please raise your hand. Yes. Would it be the highways department? Public peers are not under me. Yes, yes, please. CDD. Yes, I'm from the CDD. Can you hear me? Yes, yes, Mr. Lee, please. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for your questions. In relation to the improvements to public peers, well, as far as this policy is concerned, we have been working hard for the past few years. There are two stages, or two phases. They are underway. For the first phase, about 10 peers are on the list. 3 of them are under construction. 5 are ready for funding application as we have completed the detailed design. And then 2 others are at the stage of detailed design, and we are not yet ready to come here to get funding. And then for the second phase, 13 peers, 2 of which have their detailed design completed, and we are almost ready to ask for funding approval. 6 others are still at the stage of feasibility study, and then some others are at the stage of initial studies. For the 2 that you mentioned, when we roll out the projects, we did talk to the local people as well as the district council and other district groups to understand their needs. First of all, parking of bicycles. If there is a need to provide parking spaces for bicycles in the vicinity, we can certainly incorporate this element in the improvement to the pier. And we can liaise with the local people to see how we can provide sufficient parking spaces for bicycles at a convenient spot. For universal accessibility or barrier-free access, if people with disability have to use the pier, and when it is known to us during the public consultation process, we'll certainly give it detailed consideration. For the details, maybe I would suggest that we defer to the time when we are ready with the detailed design, and then we'll go to the relevant panel and we'll come to the PWSCI. There will be details in that paper. So in brief, what it means is that for the various aspects that you mentioned, they were given consideration during the public consultation as well as our detailed design stage. I think the time slot has been fully taken up, but somebody would like to speak. Would it be the permanent secretary? Yes, Chair. If I may respond to the point made by Mr. Chen, that is for the promenade open space in Chi-yuen, and it is worried that the parking spaces will be cancelled. Indeed, a temporary parking slot will be cancelled. For the LPG goods vehicles parking spaces, we plan to reprovision them to a site in the same district as well as another site in Chi-yuen. Well, the Highways Department will also provide curbside nighttime parking spaces. We will follow this up. As to the point made by Mr. Chen, that is the reprovisioning of the public mortuary. I don't think we've got time to deal with it today. Maybe after the meeting, this can be taken up by the member. Next, Mr. Frankie Yik, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Well, insufficient parking spaces has always been a problem that is affecting us, and the previous term of the LegCo has had a number of rounds of discussion. Now, among the 71 projects, only 3 are related to parking spaces. For Simei Street, we don't have any idea about the number of parking spaces. For Project 43 and 44, altogether 600 will be provided. We have a very severe shortage of parking spaces. Despite rounds of discussion by the previous term of the LegCo, it appears to me that the government hasn't given sufficient weight to this problem. Please explain. Now, for the Eastern Street North open space at Sai Ying Pun, the PS gave an answer. I went there last week. Indeed, I identified a problem. I don't think you have consulted the sector. They are ready to take to the street to protest strongly. Now, we are talking about dangerous goods vehicles. As the Permanent Secretary has said, there will be parking spaces to be made available elsewhere in the same district as well as Chi-yuen. But I don't think all the displaced parking spaces will be sort of compensated. For the dangerous goods vehicles, we have got one in the Western District serving the local people, just like the case of bus terminals. But then if you say that if you need to have overnight parking for buses, you can go to Tin Shui Wai. But I don't think this is the solution. Yes, people want to have an open space, people need a promenade, and you want to go ahead. But I don't think you need to cancel all the parking spaces. I think you can do it partially. And I think right next door there's a nursery run by the LCSD. The way that the conditions that I saw convinced me that it must have been left idle for a long time. On Thursday, we're going to call a meeting with the Bureau, and I will give them the details concerning how I view the matter. Chair, I just want to point out that it appears to me that concerning the severe shortage of parking spaces in Hong Kong, it seems that the government has not taken the matter seriously. Well, for commercial vehicles, we have had a problem for a long time. Now you're cancelling the parking spaces. The goods vehicles can only be parked on the road, and the police will take action. And there was this experience that the same vehicle got booked 3 times a night. Well, in fact, for commercial vehicle parking spaces, I think the number has been dropping. So Mr. Yik is concerned about a number of projects arising from the shortage of parking spaces. So who will take this question? Development Bureau or ASD? ASD would like to have a go first. Yes, Director of Architectural Services. Thank you, Chair. Let me go to the various projects mentioned by Mr. Yik. I think I can provide the number of parking spaces to you. For the Simei Street, 300, and then 20 or 26 for motorcycles. For Yanqiao Street, 200 public vehicle parking spaces. Cheng Kung O, area 66, and then another 365 public vehicle parking spaces, and 30 for motorcycles. So for the total, it will take us to 800 or 900. So I punched the calculator. The total will be 865. And we can share more details with you at a future PWSCI meeting.
準則嚇。
Okay, the next question is still on enough car park spaces. Can Ms. Lin also address the concern of members? Thank you, Chairman. On the planning and requirements of public parking, it's actually under the Transport and Housing Bureau, and once they set a policy, then it will be reflected in our planning. But then, although we do not have anyone from the THB present at the meeting today, when we adopt planning, we also look at temporary available space, and because sometimes they only take out a temporary lease, then it cannot be long term. But when we are reprovisioning car parks, we do try our best to reserve space in our new planning areas or to require the developers to provide car park space as well. Well, as the THB is not present, that is my response for now. This is actually of huge concern to all members. I think we'll need to follow this up on a transport panel because this is actually very frustrating for members of the public. Next, Mr. Kenneth Falk, 4 minutes, please. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, on behalf of the sports sector, I'd like to express my happiness that will be able to conduct world-class soccer games at the Yuen Long Stadium. We've been in discussion for this for the past decade, and the detailed plans have already been completed in September of 2019. And I believe that we are now well prepared to bring this item up to the Legislative Council. I know that this paper will be submitted to, by the HAB in April, and I do hope that you'll be able to build Yuen Long Stadium as soon as possible. On the detailed design, I would like to say a bit about parking. There are like 104 parking spaces around, but there are only like 4 parking spaces for commercial vehicles. You have to understand that there will be a large number of spectators, and especially in Yuen Long, there might be a higher demand for large tour buses. Public cannot really find adequate parking spaces in Yuen Long right now. Another suggestion is on the National Games in 2025 to be held in Hong Kong. Could the HAB also liaise with other government departments that in 2025 will be able to take the opportunity to hold other games as well? The Fanling East Cultural Center in Fanling, I would like to talk about the positioning of this cultural center. It should be different from the Hong Kong Cultural Center in Tsim Sha Tsui. We must ensure that we could incorporate it into the Greater Bay Area development. Therefore, in future, this cultural center in Fanling would see more communication and discussions within the Greater Bay Area. I hope when we look at the positioning, we not only look at the positioning in Hong Kong, instead the positioning of Greater Bay Area. So of course, we go back to the topic of adequate car park spaces of both commercial and private vehicles, because nobody would be taking the XRL to this cultural center. We do want to ensure that we have enough car park spaces to accommodate to the needs of the members of the public. I think the HAB will have to address your concerns, but then the Architectural Services Department is responsible for the construction of the Yuen Long Stadium. So perhaps Ms. Ho, you can take this question. Thank you. I'm able to turn on my microphone now. Can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fogg, for your question. We are looking forward to the redevelopment of Yuen Long Stadium because we're actually providing very good facilities to comply with the Asian Football Confederation regulations. There will be around 6,000 spectator seats, as this is a redevelopment in situ. Therefore, there would be some limitations. We will try our best to provide more car park spaces, and you're correct that there are to be 104 parking spaces for 4 coaches, and we will try our best to provide as many as possible. Very soon we're going to bring this project up to the Legislative Council. We'll discuss this at panel and then submit it to the PWSCI to apply for funding to commence construction as soon as possible. As for the Fan Lang Cultural Center, in New Territories East, it's actually of large scale as well. There would be a theater of around 700 seats and an auditorium of around 1,400 seats. I believe that once this is completed, the LCSD will be in discussion with Hong Kong companies and also those in the Greater Bay Area to provide more programs for us. Mr. Fogg, you can follow this up at the panel level. Thank you. Dr. Priscilla Leung. Dr. Priscilla Leung, can you first change your virtual background? Oh, and then we'll skip over to Mr. Yang Wen-kit first. Mr. Yang Wen-kit, Chairman, I'm concerned with a few projects. The first one, the government proposes multi-purpose use on the 2 special schools in Renfrew Road. We have discussed it at the District Council. You understand that we do have very few facilities in Kowloon Tong, close to none. Or can we try to fully utilize the 2 sites on Renfrew Road, perhaps to provide a community hall on the roof of the special schools? The District Council is in support of it. And in project number 3233 on schools, I hope that we'll be able to take up this project as soon as possible so that it'll be able to cater to the demand of inadequate school spaces for children. And on the project on Simei Street, I hope that the Architectural Services Department can pay attention to certain aspects, such as the basketball court, to try to provide a noise barrier nearby the basketball court so that it would not be a nuisance to residents nearby at night. And I also want to know about the opening hours. And then for the underground parking, Vincent Chang and Frankie Yick have both asked about the number of parking spaces for public use. There is no mention of that in the paper. How many of them are for commercial vehicles as well? There are many industrial buildings around Simei Street. Therefore, you must make this clear because we do see a lot of illegal parking in the area. And Simei Street is very narrow. I hope that in the design you'll be able to pay attention to that detail as well. So the Architectural Services Department can address your questions. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Yang, for your questions. For the 2 special schools on Renfrew Road, we're talking about 2 special schools that they're sharing one site. And there is a operational need for special schools. The Education Bureau is looking for services for children mainly. Can we integrate it with facilities for the public? This is actually something we need to discuss with the Education Bureau. Well, at this moment, the project proposes for special schools only. On Simei Street, we understand that the basketball court is very close to residents, and any reduction of noise nuisance would be welcome. I'd like to thank you for your reminder. We'll take note of that in our design. There are 300 parking spaces, including some spaces for commercial vehicles, but I do not have the exact number on hand right now. Very soon, we're going to bring this back to PWSC, and then we would be able to share more detailed information then. With this additional public vehicle park at Simei Street, there would be some changes made to the roads, such as a widening of roads to accommodate the car park entrances. And we would, of course, take note of members' suggestions. Well, time is up. Can you just follow up briefly? We've discussed it at the District Council. For the special schools at Renfrew Road, well, can you try to actually provide underground parking as well to provide for public use? Or they will take note of your suggestion. On multi-purpose use, the Architectural Services Department only set their projects in alignment with the requests made by the relevant bureaus. You can propose it to the relevant bureaus on multi-purpose use of the land, so you can actually bring this topic up for discussion to the Education Bureau. Next, Mr. Holden Chow, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. My question is on item number 8 and 38. 8 is actually on the improvement of Yuen Long Town, Nala. The Yuen Long residents have waited for this for a very long time, and we see that the target contract start date will be in Q4 of this year. It is estimated that completion will take 7 years. The Yuen Long residents have waited for this for a very, very long time. And there's very strong odor that has been a nuisance for years. As it's going to take around 7 years, can you try to reduce the construction date? And then on project number 38, on the upgrading of Niman Road Wharf and Deep Bay Road. This is in relation to the transportation arrangements near Long Gu Tan. So this will be consulted this year. I would like to mention Long Gu Tan, that we owe Long Gu Tan villages these 2 projects. And at the same time, the widening of the Long Gu Wan Road. And there hasn't been any connection with San Bat Nai Road as well. Also on Hong Bo Lo Tunnel. I know that the Bureau thinks this project too expensive. However, looking forward, is it time for us to effectively provide ancillary facilities for the villagers in Longgutan? I'll like to first hear from the Bureau before I ask other questions. All right, first on the Yuen Long Town Nulla, Director of Drainage Services, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chow, for his question for the Yuen Long Town Nulla and actually the overdecking of the Nulla. I think many Yuen Long residents would like to see an improvement to the water quality as well as the removal of the odor. Therefore, first of all, we will check with the EPD in relation to misconnection of sewers. In the past, we were able to trace the source and were able to rectify the situation. For misconnection, I think when we resolve the problem, we can improve the water quality. Therefore, we will first of all deal with the dry weather flow interception system, and then we can sort of improve the water quality. So for the pollution of the Nulla, the water quality improvement, they will be given priority. And let's hope that earlier in the 7th period, we can complete those parts. We'll try our best to start as early as possible, and we're going to invite tender in parallel. As soon as we get your funding, then approval, we can start the construction. All right, and then Lim Wan Road. Please be brief, Highways Department, because he has used up all his time. Thank you, Chair. Yes, for NT North, many road projects have been discussed. Currently, we understand that Lim Wan Road North and Deep Bay Road upgrading are the recommended projects. For the other planned road projects, if there is a need for such road improvement projects, the relevant bureaus will consider the needs and then refer the case to the Highways Department so that we can start the project early. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lemon Guang, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. 2 projects are of interest to me. First of all, Project 30, that is a primary school in Lin Cheng Road. The site next to Hai Ying Estate and Hai Lok Estate. For the wholesale market, site number 3, well, in fact, we know that for Lai Ying Street, we have got a one-way road, and then we have a roundabout leading to this primary school site. We haven't got primary, even without the school and without the residential block, we've already got traffic congestion. So for you to build a primary school here, are you going to take a look of the road network design at Lai Ying Street? And are you going to build new roads? I hope you can sort of take that into account when you are at the detailed design stage. And then for Project 54, Community Hall in Sai E Street, I think there's a site used by the FHD. It has been laid idle for a long time. Now it is being used as a temporary car park. Well, the local residents look forward to the development of the community hall there. Yes, I know it is part of a commercial development, but still I want to have an idea about the timetable. You're going to ask the developer that buys the land to build the community hall. So the cost will be borne by that developer. I want to know when you're going to come back to us. We've been waiting for such a long time. It's a prime site right in the heart of the area of Mongkok. Two questions here. So which department will take up the questions? Please raise your hand. Yes, again, Ms. Ho, Director of Architectural Services. Indeed, thank you, Chair. For the school at Lin Cheng Road, if I may give an answer briefly. Yes, for Lying Street, we have got a roundabout. It is sort of like at the end of the street with a roundabout. I think there's a slight constraint. So vehicle ingress and egress will have to make use of Lying Street. Well, as to members' concern, as well as whether there is room for improvement in relation to the traffic arrangements, we will talk to the Transport Department to see whether there is anything that we can do to help. And then we will then talk to the school authority in relation to the vehicular movements. So I think when the school project goes to the PWSCI, we will give you the details. Yes, what about the community hall development at Chi-yuen Street? Yes, for Chi-yuen Street, I'll be brief. Yes, the member is right. That would be dependent upon the land disposal program. We have to wait for that to happen before we can give you a firm date. That's the brief answer I can give. Thank you. Any other follow-up questions? All right. Mr. Leung hasn't got other follow-up questions. All right, thank you. A few members would like to ask questions for the second time. But of course, for those who have yet to ask a question, will be given priority. I will just check who hasn't asked a question and would like to ask a question. If we haven't got anybody for the first round, then I will let the following members to have a second go. 3 minutes each. Tang Kap-yu to start, will be the first to ask a question in the second round. Thank you, Chair. I want to know about the situation in Kowloon East. For Kwun Tong, we have a very bad problem of traffic congestion. Among the 71 projects, 6 are related to Anderson Road quarry site. Yes, we have got residential blocks going up, and we have also got other developments. We expect the place to become busy. For the new clear waterway Bay Road all the way up to Anderson Road, I think things have become disastrous. Do you know that we just can't cope? Have you made any assessment about the capacity of the road network? And then for the Kwun Tong action area, again, it is being sort of a disaster zone for smooth traffic. Well, for the Kwun Tong action area, I know that it is already very busy. So what about your project? Is it going to aggravate the problem, or is it going to present an opportunity for solution? Yes, it's an overall issue about Kowloon East, in particular the traffic congestion. Earlier on, the administration has talked about the Kwun Tong East rail line, but we don't see any sort of development at all. So who will take this question? I think the Development Bureau may want to have an overall reply for us. Permanent Secretary for Development, please. Mr. Lau. Can you hear me? Yes, loud and clear. Chair, as you have said, for the railway development programs, that's for the Transport and Housing Bureau. But then when we develop new areas like Anderson Road, we had already carried out a comprehensive transport impact assessment study. We try to see what improvement projects are needed, what new and where new roads are needed. So that's the direction that we have adopted in designing the traffic facilities. The member talked about the case of New Clearwater Bay Road. After the meeting, we can refer this concern to the THB to see if they can sort of share any observation with you. As to the Kwun Tong Action Area, indeed, when we developed the project idea, we knew about the traffic concerns. We do have some improvement elements to ease the traffic congestion at the spots mentioned by the member. Thank you. All right, thank you. Next, Dr. Chi-yuen for the second time, 3 minutes, please. Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question about specific projects because I know that individual projects will come to the relevant panels and then we have more time for thorough discussion. I think at today's meeting, it is good to see that we have a rational discussion and we are all being very pragmatic. Developments are of course good, but then there are different views among different stakeholders. I mentioned reclamation, and then people would differ in the views concerning school building. Parents may have a different view. And then even for RCHEs, that would also attract different views as well. I know the government will go through the consultation process. Usually you will ask the members of advisory committees to tell you what they think. This is not enough. I hope the government in the future will be fine-tuning the consultation process. Sometimes a project on its own is good, but if it is going to lead to controversies, then you are sort of harming the interest. So if you anticipate controversies arising from a project, I think you need to talk to the stakeholders, you need to consult the public. If the bureau or the department can explain the matter better, then it will receive a more favorable reaction from members when you come to us. Yes, consultation would not be easy, but then in today's society, I think you need to do it thoroughly, and that would facilitate the government's work. Thank you, Dr. Tick. Let me sort of explain the functions of the PWSC. In our procedures, well, in fact, we do have this item that is for the broader policy issues. They should be taken up by the relevant panels or the Legislative Council as a whole. For us, we are here to look at individual projects submitted by the administration. It isn't that we are not concerned about policies, but then we are sort of at the second stage of the approval process. For the first step, the administration will go to the relevant panel. Whether there has been sufficient consultation, whether the proponent has already obtained policy support, those are matters for the panel discussion. At the end of the discussion, the panel chair will check with members whether they agree to refer the case to the PWSCI. And we, the PWSCI, will look at the project specifics, we'll raise questions, and then we decide whether we agree to refer it to the Finance Committee. So for Dr. Tick's concern, I can fully appreciate his observation, but then just let me explain the three-stage process. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Hofeng, 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, just now, my question on Victoria Road has not been answered. Victoria Road, the police quarters over there would see 2,400 units. So there would be more vehicles on that road. But then the new road over there needs to be widened, and we do not see any widening of roads in the Victoria Road project. And together with the Victoria Road public mortuary there, I can envision traffic congestion in the area. Have you considered also widening Victoria Road so that Victoria Road would not become a bottleneck? A question on the car park along the promenade in Sai Pun. Right now, there is only 1 foot bridge from Dong Ying Street. Can you also add in more pedestrian ancillary facilities to convenient pedestrians walking over to the promenade? Thank you. Director of CEDD, would you like to take this question? Chairman, can you hear me? Yes, Mr. Lee, please speak. Thank you. I'd like to talk about the site formation for public housing in Gawaiman Road. Earlier in 2016, the THB has conducted an assessment that traffic over there is acceptable. We have reviewed the traffic impact assessment and found that with the public housing development, traffic would still be acceptable. In our project, we are going to optimize the road there and also to add in a footbridge across Victoria Road to convenient pedestrians. At this moment, we are looking into detail the traffic impact the works may have on the area. We are going to provide more details when we bring this project up to PWSCI. And I thank you for your question. While no other members have indicated their wish to speak, Ms. Ho, would you like to supplement? Yes. On the reprovisioning of Victoria Public Mortuary, I can try to provide an explanation. There would not be too many vehicles coming to the public mortuary. Therefore, there would not be a huge traffic impact on nearby roads. You have a follow-up question? Yes. The reprovisioning of Victoria Public Mortuary is actually larger in scale. It's actually 3 times the current mortuary size. There would, of course, be a traffic impact. Mr. Tony Tse. First round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. If you remember, Chairman, a year ago, the PWSCI approved 92 projects, including consultant contracts, a total of 230 billion. This year, I see a total of 71 projects involving 8 bureaux and departments. The Development Bureau proposed 26 projects, and 4 other bureaus and departments took up 4 projects. And some of the departments do not have any projects at all. I do not understand why there is a case. Do they not have any projects to bring up? I would like the government to provide a response to that. I would like to talk a bit about the reclamation on Sunny Bay and Longgotan. I remember we have consulted the public and discussed this for quite some time, and this project was submitted to the PWSCI previously. I understand that many studies take 3 or more years, and reclamation will take another 10 years. Has the government looked into shortening the time? Private developers seem to be much faster. They would complete a study within 1 or 2 years. Can the government try to pick up some speed? First question on fewer projects in certain bureau. Well, of course, that's the case because for the judiciary, there would not be many works involved with the public. In relation to reclamation and general questions on projects, can the Development Bureau take these questions? Mr. Lee, do you want to take these questions? Thank you, Chairman. On the first question, the government wants to provide better for the public when we bring up any projects. And this year, we have brought up a total of 71 projects. Which are projects that would be submitted to the PWSC within the 2022 year. These are only the projects we have received and estimated by January of this year. So this is only a part of the entirety of projects. Based on the development of the projects, we would of course make adjustments and changes. By the end of the year, we would also submit another report to the PWSC relaying all the works that have been completed, and there would also be a comparison with the proposed projects and completed projects. I would like to follow up on this question. I remember that there are many projects under the HAD, but then they may not be able to seek approval for all projects, and ultimately you provide a lump sum to them for development. Would there be limitations? I'm bringing this up because the last time we held a meeting, it was about a year ago. We still have 10 months ahead of us. Are there some projects that have been in line for quite some time yet haven't been approved? Well, Mr. Lee, you can address this question, and then Ms. Lin will then supplement. Thank you, Chairman. We will take into consideration public needs and the urgency and preparation of the projects to give priority to the projects. However, we do not have a cap on the highest number of projects that could be proposed. Ms. Lin. Mr. Tse asked us whether we could speed up our work in our feasibility studies. I have 2 observations. Very often, the government has to conduct a large-scale study. Well, we can use Longgotan as an example. We're talking about 400 hectares of reclamation land. we do not only study on feasibility of reclamation, we also look into land use and also ancillary facilities. Therefore, it would take more time. And the government has always tried to be more detailed, to conduct all detailed studies before bringing these projects to the Legislative Council. We know people expect us to shorten our working time. There may be changes in the future, but I hope you would understand that when we are working on our studies, or when we're still working on studies at later stage, we would need to bring this up to the PWSCI earlier to seek approval. We would try our best to keep to the timeline. Mr. Andrew Lam, first round, 4 minutes. Mr. Lam, you may speak. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Tse and Ms. Lin said in relation to studies. I understand that all projects brought up today have been discussed for many years. We see a delay in the works of the government because sometimes after the completion of studies, there is no centralized data to look into the study. And sometimes there may be repetition in studies. That is not ideal. I would like to take this opportunity to set out my expectations for the work in the future, that estimates and studies should all be archived in a centralized data center so that we would not have to repeat our studies over the years. Ms. Lin, would you like to address this concern? Thank you, Chairman. In brief, the department responsible for conducting study shares data. We can try to digitalize our data and to make sharing more easily. We have heard your views, Mr. Lam, and we'll try to do this to our best ability. I'd like the Development Bureau to review the procedures and to more effectively propose projects to cater to public need. And hopefully there'll be some discussion in the panel for development on this in the future. Mr. Lam, do you have any follow-up questions? No? Well, since no other members would like to speak, we end our discussion on this topic. So there is no involvement of any immediate funding. Therefore, this paper is for information only. There are a total of 71 projects on paper, an estimate of 130 billion in funding. Please note that they're both item numbers and project numbers. The project numbers sometimes different projects would be took together, they would be bundled together, such as similar projects within a drainage services project. There are, of course, many items for discussion, and the PWSCI will need to work together to review all these projects. I would like to thank the administration for answering all our questions. For any other questions or comments, we welcome you to follow this up on a separate occasion. The next meeting date will be on February 28th, 2022. It's a Monday from 10 to 12:45. I believe we'll need to also conduct a Zoom meeting on this date, and the Secretariat will send out details for the meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for attending the meeting today. The meeting is adjourned.